From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has just landed in New York to attend the 73rd session of the United Nations General Assembly. His foreign minister Jorge Arraza and Venezuelan ambassador to the UN, Samuel Moncada, welcomed him. In the video we can see he's accompanied by his wife, Cilia Flores. Just before arriving, he sent a special message.
I am coming to the General Assembly of the United Nations to defend the truth about Venezuela, to bring the voice of our country. Today, Wednesday, the 26th of September, at exactly 1:16 in the afternoon, I'm coming to receive the solidarity of the governments and peoples of the world with what is really happening in Venezuela, in our beloved country of Bolívar. Greetings to our people. I'm full of emotion to let the world know that Venezuela is resisting. We are stronger now than ever with the revolution of the 21st century.
Earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump said he's willing to meet the Venezuelan president. Trump's remarks came after President Maduro responded to new U.S. sanctions against Venezuela, saying he will be happy to talk to Trump. Trump said the meeting could happen if the Venezuelan president was at the UN headquarters. The U.S. president also said all options are open to oust Maduro from power. Let's listen to what President Maduro said on Monday.
I am willing to talk to Donald Trump. I wish if we can arrange a face-to-face conversation between Donald Trump and Nicolás Maduro. Each U.S. sanction, besides being useless, is a medal for the revolutionaries, because it shows that we are brave and we are on the right path. The United States believe they can govern the world. They cannot. The world has changed. The empires are dying, and humanity is on the rise.
Earlier, we spoke with activist and writer Nino Palizia to elaborate on how the U.S. and Venezuela's relations are moving.
On the one hand, for public consumption, in terms of showing an openness from the part of the United States, Trump specifically. On the other hand, it's kind of hard to imagine a fair and respectful dialogue when the attitude shown by Trump and the U.S. administration is quite the contrary. There is no willingness to give in from what appears to be a deliberate goal of regime change in Venezuela. You cannot just reconcile the two things. On the other hand, from Maduro's standpoint, we know that Maduro is quite open to dialogue because he comes from a position of not having any conditions on the dialogue that he would like to have.
And in the Security Council, Bolivia's President Evo Morales condemned the U.S. interference in the Middle East. Morales criticized the U.S. policies against Iran. He also rejected any attempt of intervention in Venezuela.
Bolivia categorically condemns the unilateral actions imposed by the government of the United States of America against Iran. Likewise, we condemn the fact that the United States has withdrawn from the JCPOA, hiding behind pretexts to continue its policy of interference and meddling in the internal affairs of this brother country, Iran.
Cuba's President Miguel Díaz-Canel has made his first speech in the General Assembly. He has called on the U.S. to end the blockade against the island and said this is the main obstacle for the two countries to normalize their ties. Díaz-Canel also criticized the continuous threats from the U.S. to Venezuela of a possible intervention.
The potential for a smooth, fluent business relationship is well known, and a genuine and respectful understanding would be in the best interest of the entire region. However, the essential and defining element of the bilateral relationship continues to be the blockade, which seeks to suffocate the Cuban economy in order to bring about hardships and disrupt our constitutional order. It is a cruel policy, punishing Cuban families and the entire nation.
And in a new deployment of its imperial policy in the region, is attacking Venezuela with a special cruelty. In that threatening context, we wish to reiterate our absolute support to the Bolivarian and Chavista revolution, the civic military union of the Venezuelan people, and the legitimate and democratic government led by constitutional President Nicolás Maduro Moros. We reject the intervention, attempts, and sanctions against Venezuela.
Namibian President Hage Geingob has called for immediate lifting of the blockade against Cuba. Geingob hailed Cuba as a long-standing friend who stood with the people of Namibia during the darkest days. He added its government and people played a decisive role in the liberation of Namibia, this especially in the Battle of Quito-Cuanavale, which led to negotiations and eventual independence of his country. Meanwhile, Colombia's President Iván Duque described the peace process in his country as still fragile. In the UN, Duque thanked the organization for its support in the path for peace. However, Duque added more budget and funding is required. He also asked for help to fight drug trafficking.
Our commitment, the purpose of Colombia, is to fulfill our commitment to those who have taken the genuine path of leaving aside violence. It is our hope that with the financial support of the international community, that we will be able to continue soundly on this path. Ladies and gentlemen, is a global threat. It's true that we must do more in the area of prevention and attention for addicts from the point of view of public health. That is indisputable. But it's also no less true that drug trafficking in Colombia is also destructive of the environment, institutions, and it corrupts socially.
On his part, Yemeni President Abed Rabo Mansour Hadi referred to the humanitarian response plan in his country. He asked world leaders to honor their pledges to alleviate the suffering of Yemeni people. Nearly 4 years of fighting between Houthi rebels and Saudi-led coalition has left millions of people in need of humanitarian aid. In April, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres described the war as the world's worst human crisis. And the Prime Minister of San Vicente and the Grenadines, Dr. Val Gonçalves, sat down with our correspondent Jorge Gestoso for an exclusive interview. He said U.S. President Donald Trump has a very narrow sense of patriotism. Let's listen to him.
How can you intervene? What are the circumstances under which you can intervene in another sovereign state's internal affairs? There's a matter of self-defense. If you are going hot pursuit in relation to self-defense, if there's an egregious breach of international law, like for example, the matter of genocide taking place, or if you have a system of government based on the separation of races, as in South Africa, in those circumstances, international law would justify an intervention on the basis of a resolution at the Security Council. You just can't go off on your own, on a whim, and saying, well, look, this government is against, I don't like this government. This government is acting contrary to our interests, or this government is incompetent, or there are some humanitarian issues which have arisen. No. What sort of a world would we have? It means, therefore, that if black people have been shot in Ferguson or anywhere in the United States, or there's any incompetent government anywhere in the United States, or you have poverty in the Appalachia or in certain areas of urban America, that doesn't justify anybody to intervene in the United States of America. They have their institutions to address those questions, and people in the respective countries must be allowed to address these matters for themselves, by themselves.
Women have marched in Sao Paulo against presidential candidate Jair Bolsonaro. They denounced sexism and attack to women's rights.
Women have marched in Sao Paulo to reject the presidential candidacy of far-right politician Jair Bolsonaro.
We consider that former President Dilma Rousseff was the victim of several sexist and misogynist attacks. We are also saying our rights under attack, especially our workers' right. Women are those who suffer the most precarious in the job market. We women earn less than men.
One of the members of the Facebook group Women United Against Bolsonaro was attacked just outside her house by 3 men. The group has over 3 million followers.
We are organizing over 200 events to protest against Bolsonaro. Several women have their social media hacked or have even been threatened. There is a clear demonstration that they don't want women in the streets showing their political opinion.
The march was headed by Ana Estela Haddad, wife of Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad. Vice presidential candidate Manuela Dávila joined her.
We represent half of Brazil. There is no development project in our country that considers women are an important part of any project.
Fernando Haddad joined the demonstrations by the end. He assured that women will be at the center of his government program.
I want to commit with you. We will implement it until the last consequences. This will be healthy for all. A balanced society is a peace society.
Brazil is in the final stretch towards presidential elections. Bolsonaro remains first on the polls, but women demonstrations can materialize in ballot boxes as they shout, "Sexism will not pass."
Ecuador's public prosecutor has accused former President Rafael Correa of ordering a kidnapping and criminal association. 3 former members of the intelligence agency were also accused. The judiciary is investigating the kidnapping of former Assemblyman Fernando Balda in 2012.
The State Prosecutor's Office has presented an accusation based on evidences. The Prosecutor's Office has done an objective job and it has accused 4 people.
They have mistaken the jurisdiction, competencies, and legal territory. These are 3 things people study in the first year of law. A completely unclear interpretation has been made in this case. My statements have been changed. It looks like we're in 2 different trials.
Mexico's president-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador said he will set up a commission to investigate the disappearance of the 43 Ayotzinapa students 4 years ago.
On December 1st, we will issue a decree to create an investigating commission if it has not been done yet. We will define the entire procedure we are going to carry out until we reach truth and justice.
López Obrador's commitment comes on the 4th anniversary of the students' disappearance. Clashes erupted between police and protesters calling for justice. Relatives of their students reject the official version on the case and demand the authorities to clarify the case.
4 years after the disappearance of 43 students from the Raúl Isidro School in Ayotzinapa, the relatives take to the streets of Mexico City to demand justice and truth from the authorities and different government institutions.
We haven't found out about any advancements that they have made in the Ayotzinapa case. This is why we're here again in front of the Supreme Court demanding they do their jobs.
They are demanding the completion of an investigation that lawyers consider an example of biased inquiry, which was delayed and unactioned by the outgoing government.
The current government is far from complying with that clear sentence. In fact, it lodged more than 200 judiciary resources against it. As a result, even today, it is still not being implemented.
At the same time, mothers of the 43 participated in a discussion with the Argentinian organization Mothers from Plaza de Mayo and organizations from other countries with whom they share a common objective, finding their sons at all costs.
We have seen the monster's belly and we have decided to fight because we don't want to have one more disappeared child.
Fighting against a human rights violation that has been present across Latin America, the Argentinian grandmas share their 41-year experience.
I'm not walking away from this. I'm going to keep going to the grandma's house because every time we find a grandson for all of us. It is a joy and a celebration.
In the 4th anniversary of the students' disappearance, their parents will meet with President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador and his cabinet to discuss the creation of a committee for truth. Then they will march to the capital's base.
Still in Mexico, police force in the coastal resort town of Acapulco is under investigation aimed suspicious of being affiliated with drug gangs. 2 commanders accused of murder were arrested, while the rest of the city's police have been disarmed. State police and the military will patrol the city instead. Production levels for Argentina's industries have dropped by 7.2%. This was announced as the government is negotiating new terms of its deal with the International Monetary Fund. In 2018, 8 of the country's 10 industrial sectors show negative growth. Those hardest hit were the steel sector, plastic, supplies, and oil refining. On the second day of a general strike, Argentina's public transport is at almost a complete standstill. Edgardo Esteban has the latest.
As the trade unions announced at a news conference, this general strike has exceeded all expectations. It really expresses how angry the Argentinian people are with these economic policies that are being implemented. It's like a holiday here in Buenos Aires, with almost nothing moving. This avenue is usually buzzing with buses and traffic, but none are running today. No buses, no trains, no metro, and no flights out of the main airports. So it is an expression of the widespread wish for the government to change its policies, while President Macri is renegotiating the terms of his $50 billion bailout deal with the IMF. Today, he met Christine Lagarde to talk about this. But we also saw the resignation of the head of the central bank, Luis Caputo, who is very close to Macri, precisely on the day that the president is negotiating with the IMF. So this powerful strike also has an impact on those differences within the government. So it's been an important day in the crisis here in Argentina.
More Venezuelans have returned to the country under the Return to the Homeland plan. A 4th flight from Peru arrived in Caracas with 93 Venezuelans. They say they have suffered economic hardship and abuse abroad. The Venezuelan embassy in Lima says thousands more are on the waiting list. We have more details of their journey in this report.
7 months ago, Luis Escalona arrived in the Peruvian capital in search of a better standard of life. Soon, his family came to Peru to join him. In the 3 jobs he had, he suffered abuse and was paid below the legal minimum wage.
In Venezuela, we at least have a house of our own, but here we have to work just to pay for rent.
There, you have free health and education.
Of course, for Venezuelans, education is very important. That is one thing that is expensive here.
Venezuelans who return home agree that the quality of education and health in Peru is much lower than what they were used to in their own country. After facing hunger, abuse, and hardship, they begin to value what they left behind.
We have been surviving, selling in the streets, and it was hard for me because of my health problems.
I couldn't find someone to take care of my children, and I didn't find a school for my oldest child.
I am missing our country a lot. When someone leaves, they don't know what it is to live abroad, and you miss Venezuela.
Almost 400 Venezuelans in Lima have already managed to return to their country through the Return to the Homeland plan promoted by the Bolivarian government. For this 4-plane load, priority was given to 31 clinical cases, 11 pregnant women, 24 children, and 17 family groups. However, the waiting list is long. So far, the Venezuelan embassy in Lima has more than 3,000 registered, waiting for a place to go back to their country.
It didn't go well for me. To be hungry here, I'd rather be in my country.
With all the crisis in my country, I would still rather be here.
The return to the homeland plan is being repeated in Argentina, Ecuador, Brazil, and Colombia, from where, every week, humanitarian flights of the Bolivarian government depart to support Venezuelans who want to return to their country.
Jamaica and Denmark have discussed the possibility of partnering in areas of energy and tourism. Prime Minister Andrew Holness reaffirmed his intention for Jamaica to become a world leader in sustainable development. He met with his Danish counterpart at the United Nations General Assembly and shared details of their meeting on Twitter. Fears about Tropical Storm Kirk have surfaced, prompting officials from Barbados and St. Lucia to issue a warning. In the early hours of Wednesday morning, the Barbados Meteorological Services say that the storm is expected to pass through the island on Thursday. They will be monitoring the storm to report on its exact intensity in due course. We'll take a short break now. Don't go away.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives. Saturdays, only on Telesur. The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Palestinian students are protesting over the U.S. aid cut to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees. The students rally in their school uniforms and raise slogans demanding the sustainability of relief services. The Trump administration has pulled more than $5,000 million in aid to Palestinians and ended all support for the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees.
The demonstration came in response to the ongoing cuts by UNRWA and also in response to the suspension of funding from the U.S. administration.
Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn has vowed to campaign against racism during his speech at the Labour Party conference in the United Kingdom. Corbyn criticized Prime Minister Theresa May's hard take on immigration, especially over the Windrush scandal. Another topic Corbyn touched upon was his promise to recognize Palestinian state as soon as his party takes office. He also mentioned issues around public services, the national health system, jobs, housing, and climate change.
Let me say a few words about the ongoing denial of justice and rights to the Palestinian people. Our party is united in condemning the shooting of hundreds of unarmed demonstrators in Gaza by Israeli forces and the passing of Israel's discriminatory nation-state law. The continuing occupation, the expansion of illegal settlements and the imprisonment of Palestinian children are an outrage. We support a two-state solution to the conflict with a secure Israel and a viable and secure Palestinian state. But A quarter of a century on from the Oslo Accords, we are no closer to justice or peace, and the Palestinian tragedy continues while the outside world stands by. As my great Israeli friend, the late Uri Avnery, who sadly died a short while ago, put it to me, what is the alternative to peace? A catastrophe for both peoples. And in order to help make that two-state settlement a reality, we will recognize a Palestinian state as soon as we take office.
Dozens of Nigerians have taken to the streets in solidarity with the victims of the Ahbaz attack in Iran. Demonstrators held banners and pictures of the victims of last week's attack on a military parade that killed over 20 people. Iran has blamed the United States for supporting anti-government militia in the country. And we'll leave you with the images of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro arriving to the UN headquarters in New York.
Ministro Jorge, unas palabras. Ministro Jorge, rápido, unas palabras breves. I told you guys.
We come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories you can find on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.